wellness consultant at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont. Today's presentation will address how to know if you're struggling and what to do about it. Our presenter today is Kevin Gallagher. Kevin's a clinical mental health counselor in private practice in Burlington, Vermont. He's been practicing for 30 years, working primarily with couples, families, and adolescents. Kevin is also a workshop presenter nationally and internationally and consults with for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. So before I hand things over to Kevin, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. All attendees will remain muted throughout the meeting, but you are encouraged to use your personal video feature today if you're comfortable with that. If you have a question, please share it in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that throughout the talk. For the best viewing experience, please put your video panel in side-by-side speaker mode. We will be recording this webinar and the link will be shared with all registrants. So feel free to share that with your colleagues. And lastly, if you can please make note of the disclaimer at the bottom of the screen. I will go ahead and stop sharing the slide. Thank you again for joining us, and I will hand things over to Kevin.
Thank you very much, Kim. So welcome to COVID Conversations with Kevin. Like, we don't talk about this stuff enough, you know, and so let's like zoom in for even more conversations about COVID. But I want to remind us like how cute we were, you know, back in March. Do you remember? Do you remember? And we were saying things like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, thank God this didn't happen in October. Can you imagine having to deal with winter and COVID? You know, and we all sort of thought like June, you know, by June, things will be fine. Well, guess what? It's like almost a year and it's going to kind of keep going past that. So we were really not prepared for that, but that was probably better because we had a bit more hope and stupidity, you know, for lack of a better word. I certainly know I did. That's sort of like, whew, this is tough, like April. God, what a long month that was, you know, and sort of like, oh, now I think May and June and July and August and September and October and November. So as Kim said, I've been a psychotherapist for 30 years, and I've been thinking about COVID a lot since it came like, what, 5 or 6 years ago. It was somewhere back there. But I've been thinking and talking and living sort of lots of really important questions. Questions for myself and questions for others. But the question that we're going to tackle today is, how do I know if I'm struggling? Well, folks, I can get you all out of here in about 3 minutes. I'll tell you how you can know if you're struggling. You are. You are. Like, you cannot be in a pandemic and not struggle. Like, hello? Like, now how I know I'm struggling is I'm slightly a different person than I used to be. Like, for example, I'm obsessive about license plates. Like, I'm like, wow, I saw 3 Texas license plates today. I don't really think that many kids from Texas go to UVM. And Alaska, what the heck are you doing here? You know, and I saw Hawaii, and then I saw Quebec, and I sort of thought, how'd you get across the border? Because I'd like to go somewhere someday. You know, Tennessee, Arkansas, I'm like, it's not foliage season. What are these people doing here? And I realized that that's just my anxiety. My anxiety manifests that way. You know, I watch Netflix like everybody else, and I'm watching How to Get Away with Murder, you know, something light and fluffy to make me happy. And, you know, I look at the courtroom scenes, and I think like, that's a lot of people in that room. Like, they are not social distancing as much as they should be. Or leaving the house every day, you know, wallet, keys, phone, wallet, keys, phone, wallet, keys, phone, mask, wallet, keys, phone, mask. You know, just small ways that we've all adjusted. But you are all struggling. And people say, well, Kevin, I'm not. You know, I am an accomplished, adjusted introvert. I have been working remotely for 10 years. Like, this is easy peasy for me. And I say, no, it's not. It is not possible to be fine in a pandemic, you know? So if you kind of push a little on those people that are doing great, you start realizing the things that they are struggling with. Like, I can't go to the movies. I can't go out to dinner with friends. I can't go visit people in the red states or the red counties who might be family, might be grandchildren, might be your own children. might be college friends. Like we're really compromised in some significant ways. And some of us, like I do get really annoyed. I have to say, I'll put my truth out there. How have you been doing during COVID? Oh, I've lost 25 pounds. I've developed a yoga discipline. I've taken up playing the mandolin. I'm learning Arabic. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not doing any of that. So good for you. Good for you. But they're also not getting some of the things that are really important in their lives. The difference is that they are responding to the stressors created by the pandemic in different ways, and perhaps sometimes in sort of healthier ways. So we're going to be thinking a little bit today about kind of what might some of those ways be for you. So I want to take us all on a trip today, from the land that we used to know to the land that we live in now. And so we have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to get started. Please put your questions in the chat, and every so often I'm going to tap Kim and say, hey, Kim, is there something kind of juicy for me to tackle in the questions? And then she will hop on with voice and read us the question. So these are unprecedented hard times. Like, humans were not made to sort of live like this. In fact, I have come to realize that I think the only reason work and school was invented is just so we'd have some place to go and then have something to talk about when we get home. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have much to say. Like, my life looks like this every day. Every day, it sort of looks the same. And couples are having a hard time. Back in May, there was a lot of discussion about whether we were going to have a COVID baby boom, because all the couples were home, canoodling. And what the research found by summer is that actually couples aren't really having much sex at all. Actually, they're experiencing not having much libido at all. So if you sort of feel like you're in that camp, like, yeah, I haven't really been feeling like, whoo-hoo, a pandemic can kind of do that to you. Parents are really struggling because their kids are struggling and that affects them, or they're struggling and they're worried how their struggle is impacting their children. So there's a lot of reciprocity going on, and it doesn't matter whether you've got the 6-year-olds that are trying to go to school remotely. I don't even know how that's possible. Or the 25-year-olds that have decided to move home during the pandemic and basically play video games till 4 o'clock in the morning and smoke pot. Even though they swear they're not smoking in their room, the whole house smells like reefer. That there's just enough stress all over the place for everybody. Single people, I have noticed, are struggling some of the hardest. The ones with pets, I think, are doing a little bit better. But the ones that are just kind of on their own, it's been fairly tough. I'm fortunate. I do have a partner and I do have a cat. I find myself, unfortunately, this is embarrassing, kind of watching my partner watch the cat watch the squirrels. And I call that entertainment now. So this is how I know, like, I've changed, that COVID has changed me, because I don't know as if I ever found that so entertaining in the past. So what COVID has done has created this sort of strange, anxious depression. So if you're feeling some of that, you're normal. It's not really quite a generalized anxiety disorder, and it's not quite a major depressive disorder, but it's got all the flavors of both of those. Like my getting anxious about the license plates, and am I feeling sort of really heavy when it comes to thinking about my mom, who's 81, living by herself, and not really getting to see her much because she lives in another state. I go back and forth. In my own therapy, my poor therapist, well, you can imagine how hard it is for a therapist to have a therapist for a client. But in my own therapy, I drive my therapist nuts because I keep saying sort of like, how do I tell if I'm depressed or if I'm practicing good self-care? And he would say, like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, when I think of the symptoms of depression, they're sort of like loss of interest in previous activities that you found enjoyable, trouble concentrating, feeling motivated, lack of energy, tearfulness, excessive guilt, weight loss, weight gain when you're not trying to do either. They talk about the freshman 15 in college. Well, I think all of us are a little familiar with the COVID-19 that we might be sporting these days. So I look at those things and I sort of think like, as an off the scale extrovert, I sometimes don't recognize how I'm living my life. Like I don't want to see people and I'm tired and I crave quiet time. When some college friends say, let's have a glass of wine on Friday and talk, I'm glad after I do it, but I sort of dread getting there. And to me, after 30 years of working with people who have depression, I sort of think like, well, that's kind of how depressed people feel. I do get dressed, I do this, so I feel like sort of okay. But then at the same time, I'm sort of feeling as an off the scale extrovert, I am really trying to be mindful of my bandwidth. Like how much can I actually put out in a day in terms of emotional and social energy, knowing that the environment is always pressing up against you when you're in something like a pandemic. So there's the part of me that sort of feels like, well, the reason I don't want to see people is because I'm taking better care of myself. But am I just deluding myself? And actually, I'm really depressed and I'm just calling it self-care. So this is the challenge for my therapist, who fortunately my Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance pays him, and he has to continue to have me for a client. But it is a unique kind of exhaustion. If you think about, I'll talk a little bit about anxiety, because so many clients just don't want to be anxious anymore. And I tell them, people who aren't anxious get eaten by sharks. The reason we don't go in the water on the Cape when it says sharks is because we're a little nervous. The reason we don't run out in front of a car is because we think it might hurt when we get hit. Like it's just that anxiety is to protect us. And the job is though, so the anxiety acts like an alarm system, like the smoke alarm probably on this ceiling, yep. And it goes off, and then our job with our prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, is trying to assess the danger, and is there anything we need to do about the danger? Well, if all humans are anxious, because it's the survival of the species, and then we're in a pandemic, the global anxiety increases. So we're all buzzing at a slightly higher level of anxiety. And that has a unique kind of exhaustion attached to it. And that exhaustion looks a little like depression and looks a little like anxiety. And people could also be really depressed, majorly depressed, or highly, highly anxious. I have some clients that have not actually stepped out of their front door since March 16th. Which I think, wow, that's brutal. I couldn't do that. But they you can imagine they thought they only had to do that till May. It might be May of this year. So this anxiety is going to be with us for a while. And there's a lot of interest in self-care. How do I take better care of myself? What are the things that I need to do? But I'm going to be honest with you. We all know the things that we do that aren't good for us. Like, we're not really that blind to the fact that we're staying up a little too late. We're eating more comfort food at higher quantities. I now have a couple of drinks every day instead of a couple of days a week. I find I need 2 of my sleeping pills plus the melatonin when I go to bed. Screen time, too much time on social media, porn, spending money, these are all things that we know on some conscious level are probably not good for us. And so I don't want to necessarily give you a list of these are the things that aren't good for us, and these are the things that really are good for us, because we also know that other list too. I should really exercise more. I should really be more mindful. I should develop a meditation practice. I should read more instead of watching TV. maybe less TV in our house and more board games with the kids. Like, we do have a sense of these things. What's hard is that the exhaustion, the anxious, depressed exhaustion, gets really overwhelming and kind of sucks bandwidth, sucks life energy out of us, and makes doing the things we know that would be good for us possible, and also makes it hard to not do the things that we know aren't really good for us, but we want to do them anyway. All right, I'm going to take a break here, Kim. Seems like a good spot to just take a pause.
Yes, we do have one question. I will say that there has been write-ins that you should be a stand-up comedian in your other life. So the one question we have, which is great and timely to what you just said, is if you have someone in your life that is over-consuming in some of these not so good habits, what is a kind way to reach out to them?
Excellent question. Excellent question. So the person that you would be reaching out to or confronting, because that's what it's going to feel like. It's going to feel like you're confronting them. We get nervous that they're going to be defensive and that they're going to sort of argue with us, and we don't want an argument. We really just want to express concern. So I think some of the ways to do that is a really soft touch. Like, honey, I've noticed that you've been kind of drinking more wine than you usually do. Or, I've noticed that you've been falling asleep more in your chair at night, and I come and find you like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and wake you up to come to bed. How are you managing your stress? Because sort of kind of watching TV till 2 o'clock in the morning just seems like stress. It's not really that pleasurable. Or, is the extra wine that you've been drinking really helping you kind of manage your stress? And might it be also potentially creating a different problem? That I'm just concerned. So I think it's just expressing concern. An organism cannot be under stress without sprouting a symptom. So that list of things, food, alcohol, pills, staying up late, screen time, spending money, porn, these are not things to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. These are just what humans do under stress. It's just not possible to not get a symptom of some sort if you're under stress. And so if you could see that other person's kind of dysfunctional behavior, maybe in your own opinion, as a sign of their distress, then how do you talk with them about their stress? Not about their drinking or their TV watching or their spending too much money on Amazon or all those other things that we sort of know probably aren't really good for this person. Hope that helps. Hope that if it doesn't, ask a follow-up question. All right, so I want to talk about a cycle of stress that I notice. So all creatures experience some kind of stress. Like, for example, the gravitational force would actually prefer us to be horizontal and not vertical. So the fact that we walk around on 2 feet all day puts enormous stress on our back because we have to hold ourselves up all day long. We're used to it by now, but gravity would really want us like flat, not standing up. So just as organisms, we are under stress. You walk on your lawn, you stress out your grass. You're making tiny little breaks in each blade of grass. So stress is just a normal thing. When we have extremely high stress over a prolonged period of time, which is what we're experiencing in a pandemic, we get this idea, and I get it too, we get this idea that control is the answer. If I could get more control over things, control over my kids, control over my food, control over my job, that then I will have less stress. Well, once we fall trapped to the control game, we start having more expectations because we think with more control, we should expect better outcomes, less stress. So stress makes us seek more control, makes us increase our expectations. And what do you suppose is the fast track to disappointment? As the Buddha said, all suffering comes from wants. So expectations will make us more miserable over time. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how to not have expectations. Like, I don't get up early enough to make sure my car starts. I just expect it to start every day and am pissed off when it doesn't. If I go to the ATM and it says temporarily out of service, please use one of our other convenient locations, I think, no, this is the convenient location. The other ones are the inconvenient locations. Just call them what they are. But I don't have enough Zen to sort of say, namaste, it's all fine, it's just an ATM. It's like, no. So we live with expectations all the time. And they also have a strong relationship to our disappointment. So if you think of stress, we seek control, we have higher expectations, we get disappointed, and that makes us more stressed. So one of the things you can be thinking about is just recognizing, of course you're under stress, even if you're one of those well-adjusted introverts who has learned to play the mandolin, to recognize your stress. How is that stress manifesting? Are you paying attention to it in thoughtful and meaningful ways? And can you stay out of the control trap? The idea that as soon as I get more control, I'm on top of all this stuff. It's like, you're not going to get more control in a global pandemic. You're one person. So sort of work on managing the one person, not the workplace, not the family. I've heard a lot of families sort of say, our cleanliness in our house has gone down quite a bit. It's like, yeah, because you probably sort of think at the end of the day, do I really want that fight, next, for everyone to kind of clean up their messes. And we're also learning to live with more mess, which is sort of interesting. So this stress cycle that I described really has a profound impact on our mood. And it would be really key for each of you to adopt this idea. You only have to do it temporarily, maybe just for the rest of the pandemic, although lifetime would be fine too, to not take things personally. So I'll give you a great example from last week. I get home from work, tired. My partner's already cooking in the kitchen. I said to him, did you get the mail? And he's like, is that my job now? I'm like, no, it was really just a question. And he's like, well, it felt more like an accusation to me. And I'm thinking, okay, like I don't want to live here right now. Like, this is like really stressful. Like, it was a question. And I sort of think like, I could, I'm Irish, I'm stubborn, I can hang in a fight even for a cause I don't want to win, just to do it. And the urge to want to argue is really high. And it's just sort of like, Kevin, we're all tired. We're all tired and we're all stressed. I probably had a tone in my voice. And so I said, sorry, no, it was just a question. And then I sort of went upstairs and I just sort of thought like 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, let's just. So trying not to take things personally is pretty important to do. I think, Kim, you want to talk to me? No?
There's a lot of people that are feeling seen right now, which is fantastic. And there's great comments coming in. I think one of the questions that come up from a couple of people actually is just, how do we get motivated to do things we know help us feel better? Like the lack of motivation for some is crushing. It was the word that was used.
It is crushing. And so I would encourage you to not consider it a lack of motivation, but a lack of energy, because motivation requires energy. So my guess is that you're more tapped out somewhere or everywhere in your life right now. And so you don't bring enough game to be motivated. It says to not be motivated about things that you actually like to do is a sign that sort of like, there's no gas in the tank. We're just low. And so it's sort of thinking about motivation has more potential to arrive and be helpful if you've got some energy. And I have to tell you, this COVID stuff is exhausting. It's a unique exhaustion. It's not like regular tired. It's like a really weird kind of tired. And I have to tell you, pandemics, it's really uncommon, folks, for 7.5 billion people to have the same problem every day. You know, back in the old days, you know, someone's having some marital discord, someone's having some problems with their kids' behavior in school, some people, you know, having a sick elderly, you know, relative. You know, we sort of had different problems. And now we all have those different problems, and then we all have the exact same problem. And that is what is kind of sucking life energy out of us. It is hard to have to function in ways that humans were not really designed, not really made for, to do this. We're going to do it, and we'll hang in there, but it's hard. It's been hard, and it's going to still be hard. All right. Not sleeping, depression, you know, how to help. What about people who don't see that they have a problem? I had a client this week who said to me, she works in a school, and she said to me, I was walking in the hallway, and one of my colleagues, one I don't even know very well, she said to me, hey, are you okay today? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And so she said, that was kind of weird. And I said, well, were you okay? And she's like, no, I'm not okay at all. And I said, well, why did you say you were okay? She said, well, because the question, first of all, surprised me, but like, you know, no one wants to hear, you know, my burden. Like, they have their own burdens, because remember, we're all having the same problem at the same time. And I sort of thought, okay, this is a problem, because none of us are really that okay, but if we're all pretending to be okay, we're basically lying. And I really want to encourage less lying. You are not burdening somebody by telling them your struggles unless you are expecting them to fix it. That is burdensome. To just tell somebody is an emotional connection to another person. So I actually told this woman, I said, I would encourage you tomorrow to tell that teacher that I really wasn't doing well yesterday. What did you notice about me that made you ask that question? How is my stress manifesting itself? What do I look like? You know? And then other people sort of say, sometimes I want to ask people how they're doing because I kind of think they're not doing great, but it feels really awkward and uncomfortable to do that. And so I say, ask anyway. Like people can just tell you, no, I'm fine. Folks, check your mics. Someone's got a mic on, and just sort of check and make sure you're all muted, just for the recording. I don't mind it, but the recording would be better. So ask people. Like, it's not weird to be asking people, are you okay, when the whole planet is struggling? You know, it's not intrusive. It's not intrusive. You might not get an answer that is genuine, but like the woman that I saw this week, it did cue her enough to sort of think like, I thought I was doing a pretty good job hiding how miserable I am. Clearly I'm not. If someone who I'm not even close to in the school says, are you sure you're okay today? Are you all right? Is everything all right? I don't think it would have been a burden if she had said, not a great day. Don't really want to get into it right now, but not a great day. Or I really thought the lift that I got after the election would have stayed, and I'm right back to feeling the way I felt before, like just this heaviness all the time. So that's some about sort of helping people if you sense they have a problem or you feel uncomfortable sort of asking. This is a perfectly, if you get in trouble for asking, someone punches you in the face, say, or something, you know, ridiculous, you give them my name and my phone number. Kimberly has my cell phone. She can even give you that. And they can call and yell at me for giving them the worst advice ever, which was you can ask people if they're okay. And I will eat crow. I will happy to be owning that. Because I think the not talking to people is not helping us at all, as a species and as a community and as an individual. Okay. Kim, anything else pop up before I sort of shift a little bit gear?
There was a question about what if you don't like to do anything right now, but I think that you got to that earlier.
I don't want to do anything.
Yes, even the things you used to find fun previously, but I think you sort of caught to
Yeah.
that.
Well, sort of like so I see a lot of adolescents and they'll say sort of like, oh, I did nothing this weekend. And I'm like, well, it's not possible to do nothing. Like, did you sit in a chair and stare at your fingernails, for 2 days? Like you must have done something. Because usually what people mean when they say I'm not doing anything is they're not doing anything that they think they should be doing, but they are still doing something. So I would ask that question, or sort of like if you want to ask a follow-up question as to sort of what your nothing is, that might give some clues as to sort of like what's kind of getting in the way of you getting there. All right, so work-life balance. So this is sort of a joke. Lots of books written on it. I don't like, who does that? Like, if you know anybody, like, again, contact Kim and get my cell phone number and have them contact me, because it's it it might hit a sweet spot and then it will shift again. So that these two things, work and life, actually even out, I think it's pretty rare, and a moving target. But it's what we are told a lot and we read a lot and we're encouraged to think about is you really got to really strike a nice balance between work and home. And it's like, yeah, for a second till your kid throws up, for a second till your septic system backs up, for a second, like, or you have to, work all weekend. Yeah, it's like it doesn't stay. It doesn't stay. So be careful of that. But the work-life balance, I think, the trap of work-life balance, I think, ends up affecting people's ways of thinking about how better to cope. So what's happened during this time is that most people's regular coping skills have been either ended or really truncated in significant ways. I go to the gym 5 days a week. I don't go to the gym anymore. I go to the edge and swim. I don't go to the edge anymore. I love kind of running with my group of running friends. We don't really do that as a group anymore. It's not probably good for us to all be together panting under our masks together. And so we've had to develop a flexibility about something that we probably were really rigid about before the pandemic, but didn't know it. And for me, it was, classes at the YMCA. The reason I go to classes is I don't like exercise. People say, oh, you're so disciplined, Kevin. It's like, I only go to eat. Like, the only reason I work out is so I can eat more food. It's not because I'm fit or buff which I'm neither of those things, but it's sort of like, and the reason I do classes is because someone will yell at me and tell me what to do. Catholic school kid here. And so I will do what I'm told, give me 30 more burpees. I think, oh my God, I hate you, and I will do them, even though I don't want to, but I will do them because you said so. I don't have that anymore, and I realized, when I lost the gym, that I had lost something that was incredibly important and singular. So I think this was part of my problem, is that I had a thing. Well, I had a couple of things, but I had a very significant thing that was integral to me maintaining my mental health, my better mental health, and then it was just gone. And I've got TRX here in this chair, putting the bands up on the door and swinging my legs around. I have no idea what I'm doing. I think I'm probably going to break something. I run. I hate running, but I just do it just because, my feet still work. But it's been hard to sort of think about replacing things. And so what some people are replacing, say, the gym or their walks with is more couch time, more expensive potato chips and craft beer. And I'm just reminding you that those things are not, those are not equal. If you lost the gym, kind of more expensive potato chips is not the solution. Like, those are different. So you have to sort of think along the same lines. If you like being outdoors, and thank God we had the summer that we had, that we really got to actually pretend that we didn't live in a terrible COVID place, because we could go so many places in Vermont and be outdoors. But anxious people did not find it helpful to be outdoors, even in nature, because they were afraid of the virus. So again, the weight of the stress and the anxiety creates a unique exhaustion. So self-care and coping, I'm not very imaginative, and so I just like ask people. And see, when you're a therapist, you get to ask clients. So what are you doing? I can make it sound like it's really like clinical. Well, what are some of the things you're doing for self-care? I've been doing hikes. Oh, where do you like to hike? And then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go there. I just can't come up with things sometimes. You used to be a real cyclist. Did you end up buying one of those ridiculous Pelotons and all of this? And they're like, no. I have found this Pilates class online. Really, what's the name of it? So I'm mining data all the time to hear how are people coping, and then I can say to myself, yeah, I'm not going to do that, or that's not a bad idea. But you're going to have to be really flexible, and you're going to have to continue to figure out, because again, folks, this is going to be longer than March, longer than May. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but it's going to take a while to get a whole country, and then let's go on to the rest of the world, all in line. This is going to be a path. I think we're probably doing a little bit better in winter than we would have if this had started in October, because we actually kind of know how miserable it is, and so we could anticipate some misery, whereas we would have just kind of been blown away if cases started in October and by Thanksgiving we were in lockdown, and we stayed that way till June. Short amount of time. All right, Kim, any questions?
No, we are still good.
Okay, so I have some questions. Some of you submitted questions in advance. Thank you, because those things were really helpful in terms of me trying to kind of steer my way through things that might be helpful to talk about. So I have some of them. Let's see. Do I dislike my job, or my house, or my kids, or my partner, or is it just COVID? And I'm just gonna go with COVID. I've been really encouraging people. This would not be the season to reevaluate your marriage. Unless it's really bad, in kind of frightening ways, to be overwhelmed and exhausted and stressed, my guess is you wouldn't be doing the best assessment on your marriage. So I'm chalking up most of all my partner misery to just the pandemic. I sort of like, yeah. I won't tell that story. It's a good one though. Do I dislike my job? It'd be hard to tell. Maybe you disliked your job a little bit before, and now you dislike it even more. That's possible. Although it's a hard time to think about shifting jobs. Do you dislike your house? Yes. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You spend way too much time there. Yes, you dislike your house. You would really like someone else's house. You would like anyone else's house. You would like a hotel room. That's what I fantasize about. Clean surfaces everywhere. And someone comes in and makes my bed in the morning, and it looks just like it did when I checked in. And then the next day, just like it did. But instead, the piles on my kitchen counter of paperwork, that's what I see in the morning. That's what I see when I get home from work. That's what I see in the morning. So that has its own stress. So yes, of course you dislike your house. And do you dislike your kids? Yes. But before the pandemic, you dislike your kids sometimes. You love them. You'll take a bullet for them. But do you like your kids all the time? I don't know any parent who does that. Kids can be phenomenally annoying. It's not like they say, I know you're really stressed, Mom, so I think I'm just going to kind of give you a break and behave today. Like, what 3-year-old does that? You know? Instead, it's sort of like, I feel like kind of coloring on the wall and taking a poop in the living room. That's just kind of what I'm in the mood for. What's your day looking like, Mom? So yes, of course, but I would blame a lot on COVID. What to do when your family is more stressful than supportive? So there is a lot of this going on. And it's been even made more complicated by kind of the political friction that's been going on, because they've sort of been kind of, they've been kind of dovetailing with each other, is what I've noticed, is that, you know, families that have sort of like, you know, pro-Trump, pro-Biden family members. And so there's the vaccine is toxic and the virus is a hoax. And so it's sort of like my family stresses me out. I've actually been really very firm with clients who have wanted to cut family members out of their lives permanently. It's like, no, that will never improve. But like just feeling really like some relationships are really, really stressful. There's also the other kind of ways that families are stressful. like, so I'll give you an example. So my 96-year-old aunt who lives in South Burlington, you know, so at the beginning of the pandemic, I was doing a lot of shopping for her and stuff. She lives alone, still drives, shouldn't. So then after a while, she started doing Instacart or something, Hannaford's to go. And then I see her in the grocery store. And I said, what are you doing here? And she sort of did this. You know, like she's being naughty. You know, she kind of covers her mouth. And she's like, I know. I just really just wanted to come to the store and walk around a little bit. And I said, I know, it's just really like, you know, you're 96, you know, and your kids haven't seen you since last January because they live out of state. So like, I'm trying to like keep you alive here. And she said, I know. She said, I guess I just have a different way of thinking about the virus than you do. And I said, well, you know what? I'd prefer you'd get a CDC way of thinking about the virus, not like a Kevin versus Kathy way of thinking about the virus. You know, but I thought, how cute of her in her soft little voice to sort of say, I just have a different way of thinking about the virus. But of course, you know, I made the mistake of telling her daughter that I saw her in the grocery store. And so then I've like increased her daughter's stress about her mother. So that's sometimes when family members can be more stressful than supportive. It can either be friction and conflict, or it can be people who think about the virus differently. Yeah. Kim, any questions from the floor?
No, just tons of write-ins thinking, some people even think that you might be great for a TED Talk.
Folks, pay attention to self-care.
There is sorry.
Go ahead.
People are enjoying it so much, they're asking about the link in the recording. So we've just been answering that, but no new questions that I've seen for the group.
Okay. All right, another question I got in advance was, I'm feeling guilty or I'm feeling selfish for taking care of myself. I don't know who you are, but stop it. Like, just like, don't feel guilty. Like, every person who is taking better care of themselves is raising the health of the planet, one at a time. So I can appreciate the guilty and selfish. Some people are feeling guilty that they have jobs when other people don't have jobs. Some people are feeling selfish that, you know, we've been kind of really blessed to have just moved to a larger house, you know, before this all happened. And so, you know, I know other people are kind of really trapped in really cramped quarters, and sort of being on top of each other is like kind of mice being trapped in a cage with one another. And so I can appreciate that. But I want to remind you, I'm going to go out on a limb here and think maybe everybody on this call has at least flown once, you know, but they do that whole, in the unlikely event of a loss of cabin pressure, the oxygen thing will come down. If you are traveling with small children or someone in need of help, put on your own mask first before you put on theirs. Now, I have been on twice. I've been on planes where those things have come down and we've had to put them on. And because I'm kind of like Mr. Observer of human behavior. I'm putting mine on while like watching everybody else. And none of the parents put them on before they put them on their kids. It's completely goes against sort of like how parents feel about parenting. Of course, you will always put your kids before yourself. And even when you've been instructed by very competent, smart FAA employees, you still do it the way you always do it. So I want you to think about taking care of yourself as putting on your own mask first, because then it makes you available to be helping other people. So instead of feeling guilty, I will absolve you of your guilt in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go and sin no more. Instead of feeling guilty or selfish, use the fact that you're doing well to help others. And that can be like, if you're making spaghetti sauce, make extra and bring it to somebody, in your neighborhood. It can also be sort of like taking that risk and asking people, are you okay? How are you doing? I have a client who, I don't know how she's connected. I don't know if it's through a church or something. But she said, I feel like I want to do some volunteering in some way, which is really a hard time to do any volunteering. So she said, there are 4 elderly people who live alone that I have to call every day and check in with. And she said, one person never answers the phone, but I always leave a message for him, every day. And that's somebody who has energy right now. She's kind of doing okay in the pandemic and doesn't want to feel guilty or selfish for being fine and being employed, and her kids and her husband's employed, and both of her, adult children are employed, all living at home. So she's like, we're really lucky, and so like, good, then kind of pay that forward in some important way. But don't waste time on guilt and feeling selfish. You're not gonna get much traction out of that. You're too valuable. If you're doing well, you're too valuable. We need you. A lot of questions on behavior of children. In general, my thoughts are, as a family therapist, my thoughts are kids do as well as their parents do. So if your kids are having a really hard time, I would encourage you to look at the leaders in the family and see how they're having a hard time. Because I think this is a trickle-down problem. When I see a teenager who's kind of really off the rails, I often sort of think of that teenager as the spokesperson for the family stress, and it's only a matter of time till I've got the parents in the office, because really the whole family is having a hard time, and the out of control teenager is just the spokesperson for the family. So if your kids are having a hard time, it might be related to some of your hard time. And then there are kids that are having a hard time because they're not socializing with other kids. This is particularly true with the little kids. Actually, no, high school kids too, although they lie and they tell their parents they're going for a walk, but they actually go and get together with their friends because they tell me these things. But the little kids don't really understand why I can go to school with you 2 days a week, but I can't go over to your house and play with you. Like, that's very confusing. It's very confusing for a grown-up to understand that. It makes sort of no sense. If I see you all day at school, why can't I play with you? So kids are having a hard time. This isn't the way they like to learn. This isn't the way teachers were taught to teach. Everyone's just kind of doing their best, and their best is, again, kind of like work-life balance. Be careful of your expectations, because they're going to be the fast track to disappointment. But certainly if your kids are, experiencing kind of major symptoms, they need help with that. But I also think the parents probably need more help than the kid, because the kids rely on the parents for help more than they do kind of community resources. So the better I can get parents in shape to handle the distress of their children, the better their parenting is. And oftentimes that sort of like helps decrease the amount of distress that the kid is feeling. I had another client this week. She's She's got a lot of piss and vinegar in her. And she said, I'm so sick of this, like, gratitude and hope. We got to have hope. We got to have hope. And you need to be grateful. Be grateful for what you have. And she said, I get so annoyed when people, like, tell me that I need to be hopeful and that I should be grateful. She's like, I've decided, which I thought was brilliant. She said, I've decided that gratitude and despair can coexist. I can be miserable and be grateful at the same time. I said, yes, you absolutely can. And she said, I am not going to be bullied into being hopeful because I am not feeling hopeful right now. I am feeling like crap. And yes, I am grateful for many, many things. So I'm not going the hope route. And so I think kids probably need adults to help them with that. That how can they be miserable, but also how can they be grateful? How can they have some hope? A job of a parent is to try to bring hope to their kids' lives when they're really discouraged. Like the kid who woke up his father at 3:00 in the morning last week and said, Dad, what if there's not Little League this year again? And the father's like, honey, we can't talk about that right now. You got to go back to bed. I know, but I can't sleep. It's like, I know, just go back and try. You will play baseball again. That father doesn't know if that's going to happen this spring. But that father knows that I can't tell the kid that, the world's ending, so you're never playing baseball again. So, find something else to do. Go read a book. That's not our jobs as parents. Our jobs are to help our kids believe in our capacity to help them, which is why all of you have to make sure you're getting the help you need if you need it. But what do you do if you know you need help? If you sort of think like, I think I need help. I'm kind of struggling. Maybe I'm kind of struggling listening to Kevin. Maybe I'm kind of struggling in ways that really are a sign that I'm not doing as well as I thought or hoped. Well, you can ask, If we use lawyers when there's something we're not really understanding about kind of a legal matter, like a property line or something, we sort of check with a lawyer, like, how does this whole thing work? We use priests and rabbis and ministers, when we have spirituality or faith issues that we're combating with. We go to the doctor or the dentist if something's hurt or something's broken. So therapy is the same thing. Like it's someone else to ask. It's not designed to be intrusive or dangerous or trauma producing. I know I'm in a weird profession. Before I was a therapist, I was an investment banker. That's another story. And so, I realized, like, I have a really weird job. I build a fake living room, and I invite strangers in to talk to me about things they don't talk to anybody else about. And they sometimes don't even know how to spell my last name. Because at the end, when they're writing a check for the copay, they'll say, how do you spell your name? And it's sort of like, you just told me something that happened in your childhood that you've never told another living human being, and you don't even know how to spell my last name. And so I'm so humbled at sort of the courage that clients have to be able to come and how honored I feel that someone's willing to tell me these things. But it is weird. It is weird. But some people find it helpful, just like some people find consulting with their priest helpful. Some people find, a parenting group is helpful. Like, it's okay. It's okay to talk about stuff because there's nothing in 30 years I've never had I've never heard that one before. Like, our problems are pretty much the same. And COVID, there's one that we all have the same, for sure. But my clients are basically like me, and you. And I'm a client, kind of regular people, kind of dealing with regular things, all looking to try to make their life more manageable. That's all we're doing here. And so, it could be a sibling, it could be a friend, it could be a boss or a manager. Like, people do like being helpful, feels really good, It feels generous to help somebody. And also people appreciate when others have helped them. So there's a nice synergy between being a helper and being a helpee. It's just that you need to know you got to do both jobs over the course of your lifetime, not just one. Not just always need help and not just always be willing to help, but be willing to sit in both chairs. Kim, anything else pop up in our last couple of minutes left?
Yes, we have 3 more questions, so I don't know that we'll get to them all. I'm going to go
Okay.
in the order in which they came in, and I think this is relevant to a lot of us.
Okay.
How can you manage fears you have over friends and family that aren't taking the pandemic as seriously as they should and or are making risky choices?
Yep. Yeah, like my cousin in Florida who likes to post on Facebook, she and all her girlfriends going out for happy hour. It's like, it's so stressful. And her father's dying of cancer. It's like, okay, fear is a good word, but I think you have to temper fear with understanding. Because I'm noticing where there tends to be a lot of tension and conflicts in families right now is families where some family members are functioning with facts and other family members are functioning with beliefs. And you can't throw a fact at a belief and expect to change the belief. So if I feel like it's safe to go out with my besties, and they've been my besties for 10 years, and we just go out and we all sit together, we don't sit with any other people, and we don't wear masks because we're having our beers. And if my belief is that that is a safe activity, for you to throw a bunch of facts at them is just going to create more conflict. So I guess I would encourage, if you are experiencing family members doing risky things, risky according to you, risky things because they're probably not risky to them, risky to you, could you ask more about it, not try to get them to change? Because when you're talking facts and beliefs, they're very separate conversations. Should we try another one, Kim?
Sure thing. So this has to do again with energy levels. Just, do you have any tips to try to increase energy levels? I noticed that I just have less energy at the end of the day than I used to. I struggle with feeling like I don't have much left for my kids at the end of the day.
Yeah. You're only going to get so much in a day. And so you really gotta be a bit of a penny pincher, especially if you're a parent. You got to pay attention to where you're spending your energy. Because to come home and have to deal with a family, which also means homework, baths, meals, bedtime, like the whole kit and caboodle, you are going to need energy. And so you can check 2 things. One, you can see if you're spending too much at work or on something else like your fear of family members. But also to sort of think like, what are the things that I'm doing in my day that give me energy? And what are the things that I'm doing in my day that actually, aside from things like work and stress, actually deplete my energy? So I've had a lot of people sort of saying, as much as I like to have a beer or 2 or a glass of wine or 2 when I get home, I find that I'm calmer, which was really important for me to feel, but I'm also less motivated to do anything. I just feel like kind of sitting on the couch and watching TV. So that's sort of an example where something is both an attempt to feel better and is actually working in the reverse. So, if you sort of think about, I have this amount of gas in my tank, how far do I have to go? And you're not going to be able to do everything you want. Remember, there is no work-life balance. You're not going to be able to do everything you want and still have lots of gas left in the tank. So watch where you spend it.
Okay, great. We are right at noon, Kevin. I can't thank you enough for your time today. Tons of thank yous pouring into the chat here and questions. We will be sharing the link. If you enjoyed the talk today, Kevin's going to be visiting us again on February 10th. and we'll be tackling the subject of there is no such thing as bad weather. If you're not a wellness contact, your wellness contact has that information at your workplace, and the promotions I'm sure will be coming out again. We already have close to 200 people signed up for that as well. So should be a great session. Thanks again for joining, everybody, and we hope to